can handle. We be faster than Django.
Can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop. Okay.
Gonna take you on a ride. I'm gonna burn the night. Why you so salty?
You sure you can handle? Okay. We can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight jacket. You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
Can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Hey everybody, welcome to Getting an Internship and Careers in Computer Science. My name is Nikolas Huebecker. I'm an entrepreneur, developer, and for most of you, fellow high schooler. I started programming when I was 9 and had a wonderful and crazy journey in both just the digital and startup space. And so I'm going to share with you guys a couple tidbits on how to actually go from getting and learning about computer science to getting into the field. So we're going to talk about 3 things today. Number 1, some jobs that are in computer science. Number 2, marketing yourself and actually selling yourself as a developer or someone in the field. And thirdly, where to actually start. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So first off, jobs in computer science. So what does a job in computer science look like? I think this is by far the best image to describe it. But the "This is fine" meme is by far my favorite way to explain to everybody what it is. Think about it as like everything is on fire and you're just kind of sitting there, and that is computer science. So all of your job basically as a computer scientist or developer or someone in the computer science or STEM industry, most of the time is solving problems. So your problem solving skills are a big piece of being in CS. So the best way it's ever been described to me is 90% of the time you're solving problems, 9% of the time you're trying to figure out where those problems are, and 1% of the time you're actually writing the code that's probably causing the problems in the first place. But really, if we want to get down to what a job looks like, a job in computer science can be absolutely anything. The really cool thing about computer science is that it can be coupled with almost any industry. Um, and so we're going to talk about a couple different jobs in computer science and kind of how they're going to grow and evolve over the next couple of years. So number 1, obviously, your general software engineer. A general software engineer is someone who on their day-to-day basis writes code for a company, be it a website, a backend system, or an actual piece of software that is delivered to a consumer. Software engineers spend a lot of their time writing and fixing the code and dealing with the code itself, and other developers to collaborate on a product. Next, we have a developer advocate. And a developer advocate is someone who works with a company like Microsoft or Google or Twitter to share their developer resources with people. So, for example, obviously in this picture we have a couple. We have 2 developer advocates. One that is a developer advocate for Watson, which is IBM's AI system, and also a developer advocate for IBM's cloud and container system. So what they do on a day-to-day basis is basically they spread the word about the products that they offer for developers and the code and the tools that are available to them from their companies. So for example, someone who works for Facebook as a developer advocate for React might spend their day on Twitter and social media discussing React and trying to be like customer service for the product, as well as traveling around the world and giving talks at conferences about how people can use React in their products and better use React in general. So a developer advocate is really cool because they get to combine their technical knowledge of a product with their communication skills to actually put that product out into the world for all sorts of other developers to use. So these are the two main categories currently that a lot of people think of in terms of CS. But there are a lot of jobs that will be happening in the future. So by 2025, over 30% of the job market in the United States and in the world almost, it's a little bit lower in the world, people will have titles that we can't even comprehend or think of right now. So some of them are slowly just becoming jobs, but there's no one to actually begin filling them because we're not actually training for those jobs yet. So a couple really fun and interesting ones I'm going to go through in just a second, and they're just combining topics that we don't normally think about with computer science or STEM. So the first one is food engineer. This is by far not an actual example of a food engineer, but just like in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, a food engineer is someone who works on developing a system that can help create and deal with food in complex situations. So just like taking not it's not just like taking all the data and obviously producing food with like a 3D printer, but a lot of restaurants and stuff are beginning to be automated, and many of them are trying to figure out how can they take all the data that comes in with a recipe or food or something and have a machine take that and create an actual meal. So that's one option if you're super into food and computer science as well. A second is a digital clone developer, not actually like cloning people or anything like that, but creating a digital clone of a warehouse or system or anything like that. So some really cool examples of companies already like getting a head start on this. For example, is Merce. So Merce is a shipping company. So they work in logistics, and so like let's say Apple releases a new product, and so it gets shipped out of China, gets put on a boat, and then travels all the way across the Atlantic until it gets put in a warehouse and then shipped out by cars. And the cool thing is Merce is trying to build digital copies of their whole entire system. So this way they can take, the copy that they have and try to figure out how they can make their system more efficient by using data that's already there. So they can say, hey, if we add an extra shipping container on this boat, does it cause the speed to go down enough? Obviously, that's a little change, but in overall, it can affect the whole entire system. And so digital clone developers are people who will end up building the systems and utilities to track these changes in these larger scale systems. So it's a really interesting field that is going to be happening as well. The third one I have a picture for is a weather control engineer. So there are multiple startups that are currently working on how can we take all the data about weather and figure out how to manipulate it. So in the next decade or so, we'll actually have developers who sit all day working on how they can change variables in the weather and recreating things like that. A couple other fun ones that I don't have slides for, but I also really love mentioning are things like a digital locksmith. So someone who, in the future when people get locked out of their systems, will have to, break back into them. Um, we have people who will have to be, AI engineers in a completely different landscape. Think very much like in the Avengers, with like Jarvis and stuff, like actually taking a 3D visual map of how AIs work and how they think and working on neural networks in a visual space. And there's a ton of other possibilities. So the really, really cool thing, which I've kind of mentioned a couple of times, but we'll mention again, is you can make your own jobs and internships, both in what the actual field is and what they actually are. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit, but you have the option of taking any interest you have and adding computer science to it and making yourself marketable in that sense. So with that, we're going to get into marketing yourself and what that looks like. So marketing yourself is basically just another way of saying networking. So when you are going out in the computer science world or STEM world or engineering world or startup world, you obviously need to start networking. You can, have all these skills, but if people don't know that you have them, it's really hard for them to be like, oh yes, I'll hire you. So, what exactly is networking? Networking is the exchange of information or services among individuals, groups, or institutions, specifically for the cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business, which is a really long thing that Webster Dictionary gave me. But more importantly, it's the cultivation of relationships. Networking is talking to people and getting a better understanding of, how you guys benefit each other. Networking is not just a handshake system. It's about growing this community around you who can benefit you and push you up. So the cultivation of relationships is a really interesting thing, and there's a lot of different ways to demonstrate this. But I did this experiment a couple months ago, doing another talk for student R&D, and it was really cool. So I gave myself 36 hours, and I messaged 20 different people in the like startup industry. So CEOs, notable people, notable developers. And I said this. I said, "Hey, I'm giving this talk on the power of networking, and just wanted to reach out to a ton of people and kind of see who would respond. Do you have one piece of advice that you would give your high school self about building your relationships?" Um, so yeah, what are you willing to share? So within the 36 hours I gave myself, uh, 10 out of the 20 people responded, so I got a 50% like success rate with that. And I have three of the quotes that I really enjoyed or that got repeated the most. And these are also some of the first quotes that got back to me. So a lot of these people almost responded immediately. I'd never talked to them before, except for one or two. So number one um, was from Daniel Singer. He's the CEO at Panda, or which is a startup. And he said, proactively create value more often for other people. While you're networking, it's really awesome to be like, oh, hey, you're the CEO of some company, can I ask you a question? Can you help me with this? The other really cool thing you can do, especially as a high schooler, is you have a lot of value you can give to them. So proving that you have that value helps kind of create a double side to that relationship. So not just asking questions, but being willing to be asked questions in return is really important when marketing yourself. There's a lot to having a conversation with someone. Secondly, love everyone. This is from Joey Cufone, the CEO of Baron Fig, which is a design studio in New York City that makes like notebooks and a ton of other things. Um, yeah, love everyone, I think, is one of the most powerful things you can do when you're trying to work with other people. You never know someone's story, one. And two, if you spread a message of positivity in everything you do by like spreading that radiance always comes back. If you're joyful when asking a question, people will always be joyful back to you and trying to respond. Um, Now, will you not always get a response? Yes. But the more you try and the more human you are when having these conversations, the more likely you are to actually begin and have this conversation. Um, and lastly, it's not what you know, it's also who you know too. And this kind of just reaffirms the point of marketing yourself. This is from Suhail Doshi, who's the CEO of Mixpanel. Um, I think a lot of the times we think, oh yes, if I know, I'm really, really good at JavaScript, then someone will have to hire me. And it's really interesting. There's a lot of studies that show you can apply to 100 companies and get nowhere. But if you have coffee with 10 people, it's very likely that almost all of them will offer you a job. So what's really cool is as a young person, it's really easy to reach out and say, hey, come like, can I come have coffee with you? Can we have a conversation? And then talking to them about what they do. And a lot of the times, if there's an internship or something open, they'll help get you in the door to apply to that. So, with that being said, with the let's start talking to other people, it seems like a big daunting task, but at the end of the day, it's really not. So there's 7 billion people in the world, which is really crazy. It's growing. Yes, some of them are your age, a lot of them are not. Some of them work for startups, some of them are other people. And more specifically, 3.6 billion of them are on the internet and have access to social media. So it's really, really easy to reach out to them. So there's absolutely nothing getting in your way between talking to some of the people that you admire and know. Now, will every giant YouTuber or notable celebrity get back to you? Probably not. But as you start beginning your journey, it's really easy to just reach out to people who are a little bit above you and be like, hey, can I have some advice on getting from, point A to point B? Another part about marketing yourself is really just how you can present yourself. It's really easy to be like, yes, I'm a student who's really good at JavaScript, but there's lots of high school students who are really good at JavaScript. So there's this really cool rule. It's called the 25% rule. And it says that 25% of the whole entire world is really good at any one thing. So 25% of the world is good at JavaScript per se. And another 25% of the world is really good at communicating with people, and another 25% of the world is good at writing. And what you can do is you can market yourself as being good at all of those three things because that intersection where all three of those intersect where all three of those things come together is really small. Only, a couple 10,000 people can do that. And those are the kind of people who are perfect for roles like being a developer advocate, right? If you are a really cool, like you're really good at cooking, and you're really good at programming, and you're really good at, like basic robotic engineering, then that's a perfect intersection for you to become a food engineer in the future. And so by knowing what you're good at and how you can market yourself in that way, it's really beneficial to beginning your path on getting into like the job market. So find what you love and do it. So anything that you're really good at or you have passion in pursuing, begin doing that right now. If you like making websites, if that's something you found that you enjoy doing, go out, walk up to your nearest, mom and pop shop and be like, "Hey, I looked at your website. It's really cool. I think I could make it better." And then ask if they'll pay you. Like that's the next step. Get someone to pay you for what you're doing. That's step number one, into kind of creating your own job for yourself. Um, Now you can also do the same thing with a company. You can walk up to a CEO and be like, "Hey, I want to do this. Um, I know your company has some internships open. How can I begin looking into those? What are some advice you have?" Most companies right now only have college internships, but if you as a high school student walk up to them, a lot of the times they'll be willing to make exceptions, or allow you to at least apply for that experience. They see it as a great give back by giving you an experience in most cases, right? So with that, moving into that, where do you start? So first, my biggest recommendation to anyone who's pursuing a path in computer science is always sign up for GitHub. If you have not been on GitHub, GitHub is a Git, which is a versioning tool repository uh, system. I don't even know where I was going with that. But yeah, so GitHub is basically a place for you to store your code. You can put it online, show all the changes that you're making, and it's a really cool use of like a resume tool. So for example, on my GitHub profile, I have a couple things pinned. One's my personal website, which I'm really, really fond of. One is a couple projects I've worked on with student R&D. Another one is some other open source things I've contributed to in the past. And it's a really easy way for companies to come look, and see how you work, what things you're working on, and kind of your progression. It's most companies don't just look for, okay, they know this. It's how did they get there? What is their experience and what is their journey? Secondly, if you're interested in the startup area and market, sign up for AngelList. AngelList is kind of like a version of LinkedIn for startups. Um, it is a really great way to start building your network and communicating with people. So if you've ever used LinkedIn before, AngelList is pretty much just like that, but more startup based. You can also apply for jobs and internships on there. And second, I'm going to repeat this for like the 16th time during this workshop, but message anybody. Um, so be that on AngelList, be that on Twitter, be that on Instagram, or just find a way to email them. It is a really, really great way to begin to build your network. So by messaging anybody and everyone, you have a really high chance of them messaging you back. And so as you do that, you can begin having these conversations. So while you're having the conversations, what exactly do you talk about? Well, first, you need to figure out a way to sell yourself, which is what we talked about earlier, and also sell your experience. So again, everybody has this journey, and everyone's journey is really important. So for example, for me, I've gotten to work on a ton of really cool projects, um, and a lot of them are because as a high schooler, I know a lot about Gen Z, like our current generation, and how they work and how to market towards them. And so a lot of what I've been able to do during my high school career and getting into my computer science career is by being able to sell not only the skills that I have, but the experiences I have as a high schooler to better market and sell things to other high schoolers, which is really cool. Another thing that's really important is selling the experience that you want. It's really important to make sure that not only are a good fit for whatever company you want to work at or whatever internship you want to get, but also to make sure that they are a good fit for you. That you're going to get what you want out of them. And a lot of companies are really good about doing that. But that's one thing to like pay attention to, and kind of fight for while you're doing that. So on this note, kind of talking about this is just another reminder. I mentioned this earlier, is that you can make your own jobs and internships. If you really want to do something and you want to really do something for a company, reach out to them. the worst thing anybody can ever say to you, especially as a high schooler, is no. They're gonna be like, no, come back to us in a couple years. Maybe they're just like, no, we're not hiring. Maybe you're gonna reach a company and they're gonna about to shut down tomorrow, and that's why you get that no. But for every no you get, there's a yes somewhere down the line. There will always be a company that is willing to help you out, and you just have to begin looking for them. Um, so with that, I have a couple just quick final tidbits as you embark on your journey into the field of computer science. First, your mental health is number one. This is one thing that is also, I always will be, I think, hard for a lot of us. But every no should not be taken personally. Um, there is this whole hustle philosophy that we have, and making sure that you have a healthy hustle philosophy as you begin, working. It's great to work all the time, and the harder you work, the better the rewards, and that's something that is very true. But if you work really, really hard and absolutely wear yourself out, you'll never actually get to those awards you want to get to. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Number two, value the journey. It's really easy to just compare where you are to where someone else is. But you should always remember that the journey that you take to get there is always way more valuable than the actual outcome. So to remember to compare your journey to everyone else's journey rather than your journey to everyone else's outcome. Everybody has their up and down moments, and using those up and down moments to your ability is the best. Because when you fail, you learn better. And then lastly, always have fun. It is 100% critical that you enjoy what you're doing. And finding a way to continuously enjoy what you're doing is really important. So as you begin looking for jobs and you're finding new opportunities, make sure you're enjoying what opportunities you're getting, and the opportunities that you're participating in. So with that, if anyone has any questions, I know there's a couple different channels for you guys to reach out. Um, awesome. So the one only question I think right now is, if anyone wants to get in contact with me, they can email me. It's Nikolas, Nikolas, at srnd.org. Or you can message me on the student R&D chat. I'll put a little bit of tidbit with some extra information in general for you guys in just a bit. Or you can also contact me through my website, which is nicholas.xyz. But again, I'll put all of that in the student R&D chat in just a bit. Cool. So if that is our only question, then yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this is going to help you in some way or another as you continue to grow in the sphere of computer science and engineering. And I hope you guys are having an awesome code labs. Thank you guys so much.